Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. The debate, Anarchism versus Objectivism, Victor Prost debates Brandon Cropper, is still up. And it may remain up, I'm not sure. But I'm going to do this reply video to it so I can get in the thoughts that I just never was able to because our host went ballistic and started screaming at me and wouldn't let me get a word in edgewise. So, I'm starting at 13 minutes and 9 seconds. And Victor's saying some stuff. We're going to let him talk for a bit, and then I'm going to say some stuff, and then maybe we'll even listen to the stuff that I say to Victor in the video. We'll listen. We'll see what happens. But there's some stuff I wanted to say, arguments I wanted to make, that I would have made, but the anarchist just cannot put two thoughts together.
Peikoff himself, Leonard Peikoff, an objectivist philosopher, he writes, just to back up my claims here, he writes, the anarcho-capitalist primary objection is not government, but the fact that gives rise to the need for one, the need for outside, impartial observers to objectively evaluate and control the use of force in society. So in other words, people, we the citizens, are emotionally wind-riddled philosophical monstrosities.
No, that does not follow, Victor. That does not follow at all. What follows is only that we are afraid that there are some people like that, Victor. Not that that is human nature. Okay? If that were human nature, the whole enterprise would be junk, of course. We view human nature as rational. We view man as the rational animal. Now, because man is a rational animal, we really don't care if somebody disagrees and thinks that they can pray to God and get some guns and go out and kill people. We just don't care, Victor. We're just going to kill them. We're just going to kill them. We'll send the police, or if there's enough of them, we'll send the army. We're not going to debate them. We're not going to argue with them. We're not going to tell them our first principles. We're not going to tell them that the initiation of force is immoral. We're not going to tell them that you can't, that's the non-aggression principle you're violating. Not even going to talk to them about it. We're just going to start shooting. If somebody shoots at us, we're just going to start shooting. It's not an argument. It's not a debate. It's not an arbitration. It's the use of physical force. And what we do in society, any civilized society, and this is why Yaron Brook said he'd prefer to live in a communist society than anarchy. What we do in any civilized society is we remove the use of physical force from daily life. And anybody who goes around with a hammer or a machete or a gun or something, they will be set upon. Possibly by the citizens around them, if it's a good society. If you know the story of the person on the train in Germany who was a maniac and was going to do bad things, luckily, 3 brave young American boys were there, and they tackled him and took him down. So sometimes you have a society full of cowards. I'm not saying that's not possible either. So no, we do not view the human nature as inherently evil, and therefore we have to have arbitration. That is not the case. We have arbitration because once in a while, very possibly, some human might not be willing to be reasonable. Or he'll be reasonable by his definition, and we won't agree with that. And he will think that he has a right to do certain things which we will not agree he has a right to do. And so then it's a fight. Then it's a war. Now, this speaks even more to what I was saying earlier in the debate, because you guys were there for that. But if you watched the debate or not, this speaks to a point when they were talking about criminals, and I said the point about the state. He said, if I go burn my neighbor's house down, the cops are 30 minutes away. I live out in the middle of nowhere. I'm more afraid that he's going to come burn my house down. I'm more afraid of retribution. And I said, well, that's the state of anarchy. But the point about the law is that when some criminal does something, it's not just him versus the victim, whoever his victim was. It's now that criminal versus the machinery of the state. And that is terrifying. The state has a lot of guns, a lot of police, a lot of jails and courts, and they have the time to do whatever they need to do to pursue you. And so if you do something to offend the state, that's what we want. We want laws to be the body of things that people can do to offend the state. And it's like, okay, if you do that, the state is coming after you. Who's the state? Oh, you just wait till you meet the state. They are some mean, bad sons of bitches. You don't want to cross them. Now, if I had my way, I would do like when we go to church and you want to contribute to the new church that's being built. I personally am an atheist. I think that all religion is disgusting. But many people have had the experience of being in church. I myself was raised in the Mormon church, so I know what it's like to be there. And I know what it's like for them to ask for donations. And I know what it's like to think, you know, I know what they do with those donations. I know they help people after hurricanes and stuff. And the Mormon church really does do it. It's one of the biggest property holders. It's hugely rich, but it also does send shirts and bottled water to people after hurricanes. Now, I'm not saying that you should contribute to the church. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that people do. I'm saying that's how churches get built. Okay? So if you say nobody would ever voluntarily contribute to a police force to protect their town, then you're just going to have to stand with that argument on your own, like Bennett here is going to have to do. He just can't conceive of that. He thinks that you're going to have the police going around robbing people. Period. We can't have police that are just paid, and we voluntarily decided to pay them, and we write the laws for them to follow. We can't do it that way. The police have to be robbing the people. The police have to be criminals, in their view. Now, I'm not really letting him have his say, so should we get back to the video just a bit?
Demolish objectivity, but praise the government. But we can praise the government for instituting law and government, for law and order. So Rand and the objectivist intellectuals suffer from a sort of Hobbesian sense of life, as I would argue. You see?
So do we praise the government for instituting law and order? Now, like I said, some of the laws are garbage. Like, for example, let's just look at a couple of them real quick. Drugs should be legal, right? There's no reason it should be illegal. And we see insane things like vaping being made illegal in California, and that's not for sane reasons. That's insane. Okay, so laws can go wrong. Now, would you rather live in a society where you can go to the local magistrate and write down a complaint and a group of thugs will go over to the guy who you're complaining against? Or do you want to live in a society where that's just up to you to get together your own group of thugs or go hire a group of thugs? Now, I like a society where any man, regardless of his economic wherewithal, can go down to the local magistrate. Now, this was true in ancient Babylon. It didn't matter if you're penniless. You could go to the local magistrate and complain that you had borrowed your ladder to this guy, and he brought it back broken and did not mend it. And the local magistrate would send a group of men over to talk to the individual and see about these charges. And then there was things about oath and under oath and swear on the Bible. Okay, right? Lots of details to it. But the fact is, you banish physical force from daily life by using law. That's how you banish physical force from daily life, by using law. What is law? Law is the use of physical force. That's what the anarchists cannot get their head around. That just bends their head into a pretzel shape. And I think it might be because they can't think on principle. So they can't tell the difference between two layers of a thought. They don't know a thought comes from something and is then abstracted into like you have the concretes, and then you omit the measurements up into one thought, right? And they just can't get that. For them, it's all one smear. It's just one level, a smear, a cloud, a jelly. They cannot see any stratification, any hierarchy, any building, any abstraction. They don't know what it means to define things. Watch here. I ask him to define things. We're going to go forward, but I say define that. You keep using the term. You can't define it. Of course he can't define it. Then his mouth runs for several minutes because he has no clear definition. He has no grasp of the concept in his mind. He cannot look at what the concept means minus 50 examples. So all he can do is just blurt out 50 examples. But we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that.
Only the philosopher kings of Rand's government, of Rand's proper government, are capable of determining objectively, while the masses are wholly...
Okay, that is not true. The philosopher kings of the objectivist government would be the lawyers, the judges, and our legislators that we elect, and the president who gets turned out every 4 to 8 years, and the legislators who get turned out every 2 years, or however long they can last, or whatever. Maybe if we like term limits, we have term limits. If we don't like them, we allow people to serve for as long as they can freely get reelected. That's who writes the laws. And the people writing the laws get churned over constantly. It's new people all the time involved with writing the laws in a free consensual society, excuse me. And there are not objectivist gods who write the laws. Now, there will be objectivist gods of some kind who set down the original law, but then that law gets argued over too, and we call those revolutions. So that's not set in stone either, Victor. So just forget about it. There's no objectivist gods anywhere. Now, the most recent and most effective objectivist gods were the founding fathers. As far as Victor describes them this way, setting down some law that everybody will follow from here on after, unless they decide to change it. And they did. They amended it again and again and again and again and again, more than a dozen times. And underneath that was just a very general set of laws that they gave us. Very, very general, that basically said, government, don't really do very much, please. That's all it said. And underneath that, chaos, right? The United States of America was chaos for the first 125 years. There were people everywhere with guns everywhere. You couldn't go around without a gun in the countryside. Right up until the 30s and 40s, you had guns everywhere. Everybody had a gun. Everybody knew how to shoot. Even in the 50s and 60s, people grew up learning how to shoot. Everybody could handle a gun. I mean, this was a wild country where there was summary justice. Now, I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that that's the last time that we can objectively point to an instance in reality where we could say that what Victor is talking about, some principled individuals setting down principled laws that shall not change for a very long time and only under agreement. That happened. That happened in 1776, or 1787 actually. That's when we signed the Constitution. So, there's your answer, Victor. No, there's not a set of objectivist gods who will determine everything, but there are courts, and that's better than what anarchy has. Because we can make a law about some new technology, lasers that are blinding pilots. We'll just make a law that you get 10 to 20 years if you shine a laser at an airplane. And you get 5 to 10 years if you shine it in somebody's eye for personal damage and assault, right? And then a few people get charged and put in jail for it, and everybody gets the word. And you can't go shining lasers around. You get put in prison. So a new technology comes out, a new way to damage, right? There's never been this way to damage other people's rights before, by taking a flashlight and going, doop, like that. Now we've got a way to damage people's rights using this technology, and so we will have to recognize it and say, this technology is illegal to use to damage people's rights. So that's how we're going to do it in an objectivist society. And then what will happen is the law will be too broad, and somebody will take it to court and say, this is not appropriate because now they've defined it in such a way that I can't drive down the highway with a laser in my truck. And I need this laser in my truck because it's a spectral photometer, because I work on natural gas wells and I need to be able to tell what's in the gas, so I have to have this laser, and now I'm going to get a felony for driving down the road with a laser in my truck. So that goes to court, and they go back and they change the law and say, well, except if you need it to drive down the road if you're a natural gas guy. And they make an exception. Or maybe they make a half an exception or something like that. So that's how we're going to do it, Victor. What's your plan? I mean, my plan isn't omniscient, right? I can't see the future. I don't know exactly everything that's going to happen. But I do know that whatever happens, you better respect the rights of the individuals involved and the sovereignty of their rights and their minds. Okay, that's what my laws are going to say. Whatever you do, it can't violate these, the sovereignty of the individual and his mind. Okay? What's your system? Oh, we're just going to find out who's the most efficient. What if the most efficient and the cheapest running and the best able to spread its services takes over the other ones. Did you ever think of that? No, nothing can ever take over in a free market. Yeah, that's because they're competing with each other. That's because the use of force has been banished from their relationships, and now they have to compete. No, we're going to compete on the use of force. That's called war. All right.
Dependent upon the power elite for law and order and for their very definitions, too.
Objection.
See?
Okay. So, of course, the funny thing here is that according to
Now, at this point, I was slightly biting my lip because he said, we'll each take about 6 or 7 minutes to open up. And right now it's at 14:26. So, and he didn't speak all of that time because Bennett did open the show up and spent 2 or 3 minutes opening the show. But we're talking a solid 12 minutes in here to his 6 to 7 minutes of opening remarks. So I was chomping at the bit. And as far as a debate goes, how much of a debate is it when I'm listening to 12-minute monologue and I have no answer, I have no question, I can't say anything, I'm chomping at the bit here. So I wasn't ready to go after his 6-minute, 12-minute long speech.
Epistemology, reason is an attribute of the individual. So I know that would be said. But just one other quote here, just to drive home the point of how the people are being separated from these philosopher kings, because we're just all human beings. The government is just made up of people, but they are making this separation of people who would be in power, writing the laws, defining the laws, interpreting the laws, implementing the laws. Yeah.
No, Victor, there is nobody in power. We are the ones in power. There's nobody, okay? And if the situation is sufficient, then there's a revolution. And the last time that happened, I mean, he's in Canada, so it's hard for him to really, like, in America, I live and breathe and was born and raised in the fact that we are a country of revolution that threw off in a violent war unfair laws. And Victor does not live in a country like that, and it's just not in his blood. And I was listening to, who was it? No, it wasn't Filthy Heretic, but it was one of those other philosophy guys. It wasn't Cuck Philosophy, it was one of the other ones. I was listening to him, and it just went on and on and on. And I finally said, is this guy a Canadian or something? Like, he just doesn't get the Constitution of the United States. He doesn't even get it. And it turned out he was a Canadian. So you guys up there just do not understand the amazing thing that happened in 1776. You just weren't told about it. You don't appreciate it. And you don't realize that we can write our own laws. And in America we did. And you guys in Canada didn't. I'm sorry.
Objectivist Robert Benedano, who wrote In the Contradiction of Anarchism. Exactly, he asks. Exactly, he demands, he challenges exactly who determines what use of force is initiatory or coercive.
Every single day we argue that in the courts. Okay? Every day. Now, I'm not saying America is a perfect society. I'm saying that it's a pretty good model of what we will have someday. And also I'm saying that any civil society with law courts and the banishment of physical force is better than the junk thinking that these guys are offering you. Just do away with the government.
It's defensive or retaliatory. By what process is that determination made? Or to put it in the terms of rights, who determines whether any given rights have been infringed or not? And
okay, here's how we determine that, Victor. A bunch of guys get together, a place called Philadelphia, and they sit around and they talk like philosophers. This is after they've been writing letters back and forth for months and months, years even. This is after reading many treatises and collecting rare books from around the world and reading through them. Books on the history of Aristotle's commentaries on the constitutions. And after all of this, all these brilliant men got together in Philadelphia, and they wrote a body of law that has not been surpassed since, and may never be surpassed. Humans might perish from the earth before anybody is able to improve upon the Constitution of the United States. So, that's roughly who's going to write the laws, Victor. Educated men. Not necessarily. Look at Venezuela. Who wrote them down there? We're not saying that humans are infallible, Victor. We are saying that humans have no choice but to live by the mind. And if you're going to live by your mind, then you better make it illegal for however you want to define illegal. You better make it illegal for people to tell you what to do. You better be able to do what you think is right. And you better not go around trying to tell other people what to do, because you're under a system where it's illegal to do that. So don't try it. The state, the immense, horrifying power of the state will come down upon you if you try to violate even the lowliest little old lady's rights. Okay. And where do you stand on little old ladies, Victor?
It's like who? For society, how are such determinations made with finality? And how is that verdict enforced?
It's not made with finality, Victor. We argue it out every single day in the court system. It goes to a higher court and a higher, all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has the power to do things other courts can't. Okay? So, what's your system for it? We have an answer for this, Victor. What's your answer?
Who determines which agency is a protection agency? Speaking of the DRO model.
Who in the United States determines which agency is the protection agency? Well, it's simple. The government's the protection agency, and anybody who tries to do anything the government says they can't do is in competition with the government. Like if you go rob a bank, you're in competition with the government, right? Now, that's literally true today because we have forced taxation. That is literally true, okay? But it's metaphorically true. It's metaphorically true in a voluntarily taxed society. Because the government is going to go around with their collection plate, just like the church sends its collection plate around. And when they come to your business asking for money, you're either going to voluntarily give to them or you're not. Now, it occurs to me that this will be published. It occurs to me that companies will publish the fact that they gave money this year to the government. They'll say, we gave $16,000. Our little donut shop helped pay for 2 new police cars, Look at those police cars driving through your neighborhood. We bought 2 of them, this donut shop here, and things like that. Or General Motors will say, this year we donated so much money to the police, it's equivalent to them having purchased 60,000 automobiles from us, or whatever, And, we give them the money, and then they do come and literally buy the cars. And so literally we're making cars and just handing them to the cops. Literally, right? So that would be voluntary taxation. Okay? In a voluntarily taxed society, the government would be funded not only just through monies given to it, but also in kind, right? Tanks could be given to it, planes, helicopters, or factories where they could make planes, helicopters. The individuals in society could build and run things for the government and say, I donate the proceeds of this factory to the government as my share of taxation, as some billionaire, right? He builds an automobile plant, and the government doesn't have to pay a dime for these automobiles. He simply builds it, he runs it at his expense, and the automobiles rolling off the assembly line get painted green for the army or blue for the police or whatever, and that's his contribution. And everybody knows every cop car is a Ned cop car. Ned is the guy. And Daddy, why is every cop car the same? Well, because a guy named Ned was a billionaire, and he decided that nobody would ever have to pay taxes again for automobiles. He decided that the taxes could go to other things, and automobiles from now on would be supplied by him. And so every automobile the government has is a Ned automobile, given free to the people of our nation by Ned, for the government to use, right? This is imaginable, right? Now, here we are debating with anarchists who are saying that their anarchistic society has never existed before, and that we're going to have to build a new society and educate people and come up with new systems and reimagine things, right? And then I come along and I say, we've pretty much got it, we just need to do it voluntarily. And their head blows off. They can't conceive of this idea. I say, we've pretty much got everything in shape, we just need to act more like the churches that send around the collection plate. and let the corporations vie with each other. Now, not every corporation can give police cars or whatever. Think about that. Who gets to give the police cars? Which do we see, Chevys or Fords or Dodges when the police drive around? Because we know that those were voluntarily given as a patriotic, contribution, or what, patriotic charity. We need to rebrand it, because when we say taxation, their head just explodes. So we need to say, and even if you say voluntary taxation, they say, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. Nobody ever did it. Nobody did it. Nobody did it. Nobody did it. Nobody ever did anarchy, and you're trying to do anarchy. Can you get your goddamn head around the fact that you're trying to do a system nobody ever did? Okay, voluntary taxation is not a system nobody ever did. It is a system that every single church in the United States of America was built by, and most of them in Canada apparently too, but I think the government helps fund churches up there, but the government helps fund them in America to some extent because they're not subject to taxation. But anyways, I'm not in favor of forced taxation. I say we should have voluntary taxation. But, okay, so this is getting a little long. We're at 26 minutes, and I am at 15 minutes. Victor hasn't even stopped talking yet. So I think, well, let's go in a few minutes. We can get up to at least 30 before my computer gets upset. Okay. Let's let Victor have it. He gets to have generally about 9 words, and then I get 10 minutes.
Spearheaded by Murray Rothbard, and which is a mere gang of aggressors. By what method and standard? So you see, he challenges all this, and anarchists sincerely believe that they're merely advocating competition, he writes, in the protection of rights. In fact, what their position would necessitate is competition in defining what rights are.
Yes. Yeah, unless you all agree on a definition of what rights are. Now, is that your position, Victor? That everybody in society would agree? If that's the case, then it's magical ponyland, right? It's unicorn la la land. If everybody just agrees on what rights are, okay? Somebody in this society is going to disagree on what rights are, and on who has rights, and on when they can practice them, and on who's violating them, right? We're going to have disagreements about this stuff. So that's really what it's going to boil down to. There's going to be some guy with a big gun and a group. He's going to have a mob. And they're going to be upset that Miley Cyrus is dancing around on stage half naked. And they're going to go hang her and kill her. And then they're going to say, we have a right to live in a righteous, moral neighborhood. We don't need that kind of sexual nonsense. So their rights have been violated. Now, how do you define rights, Victor? They've defended their rights. The government wasn't around. Their rights were violated, and they defended their rights. What are you going to do? So that's true. It just turns into a war with people talking about what their rights are and defending their rights, and that's what it turns into. If you banish the use of physical force by having an armed group run around, well, you've heard my bit on that.
So the fact that Benenano was unable to answer his own question speaks volumes as far as I'm concerned. He retreats into legal subjectivism. Okay, now this point is very urgent that I want to make here. When it comes to ethics, Rand is right on as far as I'm concerned. She's bridged the is-ought economy and all of that shit, and man is the rational animal, and so forth. But, like I said, when it comes to politics, the man, the rational animal who's able to grasp the principles of, let's say, engineering, or computers, or architecture, becomes this bumbling idiot.
We are the rational animal, Victor. And that's why we're able to write the Constitution of the United States of America. If we were the irrational, bumbling idiot, or the mindless beast or brute, then we would not be able to write the Constitution of the United States, and we would just have to see which kingdom was the most efficient at protecting its citizens, and the most efficient kingdom would grow. We would just see who was the most efficient. And some kingdoms would be more wasteful than others, and those ones would get smaller, and the efficient kingdoms would get bigger. But that's not the system that I'm in favor of.
When it comes to justice. So is there something mystical about this government?
Was there something mystical about the men sitting around in Philadelphia in 1776, arguing, debating, and voting? Was that mystical? because that's at the core of the American project. Was that those afternoons on that sun. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't read a good book about this, and you want not an intellectual book, not what I mean to say is not an academic book, slightly intellectual but lightly written by a nice lady named Catherine Drinker Bowen. And she wrote just a good patriotic, I think she believed in God. I think she was a theist, although you couldn't really tell from reading the book, if I remember. Maybe. It was really a very good book. It was called Miracle at Philadelphia by Catherine Drinker Bowen. Please, please do get a copy of that book. Victor would do well to read that when he tries to get his head around objectivist gods sitting in judgment over other men. So, it's more like the counsel of the wisest, or something like that. That's the best approximation. And not every generation's going to be able to put together a very good counsel in this way, unfortunately. That means, the implication of that, Victor, is that philosophy and culture are important, right? If our philosophy would have been well taken care of and our culture would have been well tended, then we would not be surrounded by a bunch of monsters whom, if we put into a constitutional convention, would end up giving us socialism or something like that, right? The fact that we could not do a constitutional convention today and come up with anything good shows us that it's very important to keep control of education and culture, etc. All right, now, we are over 30 minutes. We've got to stop now. I guess I'm going to keep going. I want to do this before he takes it down.